Hello furniture friends, Katie here from Salvaged by K. Scott. I am out in my very cold garage just getting ready to bring you along on the thrift flip of a cute little dresser that is getting an apothecary twist. I scooped up this 70s dresser from the thrift store on a 50% off furniture day for $28. It's already got these fun divided drawer fronts, so it's going to be the perfect canvas for a classic apothecary style thrift flip with some industrial vibes. If I take a look at the back, I can see that the frame of the dresser is made from particle board and veneer, and the drawers look like they're all made of plywood. I'm starting off this flip by pulling out all the drawers, removing the hardware, and giving the entire dresser a really good clean. The original manufacturer was pretty messy with their tinted lacquer application, so I used some 180 grit sandpaper on my little Surf Prep sander to clean up the sides of the drawers. I really wanted to change up the base of this piece and give it more of a modern feel, so I flipped the dresser onto its back and measured out some straighter lines onto the kick plate. Then I used my jigsaw with a clean cut blade to cut some new angles. This is a really easy way to update the look of a piece without having to build an entirely new base or the added expense of buying new feet. I think I want to leave this piece of wood on the front of the dresser natural, so I sanded back the old finish and smoothed out all of my fresh cuts. I also went ahead and filled in the hardware holes because I'm going to be adding some new Apothecary bin pulls to these drawers instead. Two of the drawers on this dresser have 4 sections and the other 4 drawers have 3 sections, but I want them all to match. So I'm going to be using my brand new compact router for the very first time. I asked my husband to help me measure things out because I am terrible at that. So he found the center point of these drawers and then measured out the center point of the router bit and clamped a metal guide up for me. I really wish that I had gotten a few more angles and shots of this, but this 1/4 inch Cove bit cut a matching groove into the original design. So now all 6 drawers have the same 4 sections. Next, I used that same 180 grit sandpaper to scuff up the entire dresser and smooth out a few minor scratches on the top. When I was all finished with my sanding and cutting, I wiped away the dust with a damp microfiber cloth, and then I wrapped my drawers in some of this pre-taped masking plastic. I also masked off the Behr wood kick plate so that I didn't make a mess of it. To paint this dresser, I'm going to be using the Wagner Flexio 590 with the detailed finish nozzle. This is an electric turbine sprayer that I am just getting to know. I'm also getting to know this Kilz Restoration primer. I usually use a shellac-based primer, but that's not safe to spray in this kind of gun, and it's just kind of a messy pain to work with. So I'm pretty hopeful that this claim of an oil and shellac performance in a water-based formula lives up. I gave the primer a thorough stir, loaded up the sprayer, and sprayed a quick coat over the whole dresser. Once that was dry, I smoothed it out with some 400 grit sandpaper and again wiped up my dust. The color that I want to use on this dresser is called Underground, and it's by House and Canvas. I love this paint, and I especially love this moody gray green. House and Canvas is a very thick paint all on its own, so I mixed up about 500 cc's of paint with 100 cc's of water to thin it out. You should absolutely filter or strain your paint whenever you are adding it into a sprayer, but I hate doing it and I never remember, and I'm just willing to take the risk of clogs. Once I was satisfied with the paint consistency, I sprayed on my first coat. This is what my first coat of paint looked like once it was dry. I sprayed on a second coat and that gave me really nice full coverage, so I emptied and cleaned my gun again, and a few hours later I was ready for top coat. My favorite liquid top coat is a Varathane Diamond Wood Finish in a satin sheen. And when I'm working with darker colors like this, I like to add a teaspoon or two of the paint right into the poly to tint it a little. This really helps the color stay consistent and prevent any streaking or hazing that can happen. Since this top coat is such a thin material, I adjusted my sprayer and turned the X boost down to between a 2 and a 3. And I also tightened up the flow dial on my trigger so that not as much product would come out. I sprayed the top coat, keeping my arm as straight as I could with the gun a consistent distance away and overlapping my passes by about 40 to 50%. And I thought it was looking good until I went back to the side where I had started. Apparently, I didn't turn things down enough and sprayed way too much poly. It was dripping and sagging, which is extremely frustrating, but it happens. I like to deal with this specific mistake by not touching it at all. I let everything dry all the way, and then I came back and sanded all of these drip marks smooth with some 400 grit sandpaper. Then everything got another light coat of paint, and once that was dry, another try of the poly. I ended up spraying 3 coats, waiting 2 hours in between. The next day I was ready to install all of my new poles. I think the best way to get all of these poles lined up and keep them looking consistent across the drawers is to make myself a template. I grabbed a scrap of wrapping paper, a ruler, and a pencil and mapped out the first drawer. I found the center of each section, placed the poles where I wanted them to sit, and then I could mark out where I needed the holes to be, tape my template onto the drawer, and drill. The last thing that I need to look after is this kick plate. I want to stain it in a warm color, so I pulled Behr's water-based stain in the color Chestnut out of my stash and brushed it on. As soon as I got about half of this stain on, I knew it was not the right choice. It's way too red, it's way too dark, and I'm just not a fan. So I waited for that to dry, and then I broke out my sander again and sanded it all the way back to bare wood. Luckily, I also have a pot of this water-based stain in the color Early American, which is a lighter brown. So I brushed that on and liked the color much better. Once I had the entire cake plate covered, I came back with a clean microfiber rag and wiped away the excess stain. To seal up this stain really quick and easily, I rubbed on some of Wise Owl's White Tea Furniture Salve. This is a hemp oil and beeswax product that will protect the wood and keep it looking nice. And after all of my shenanigans with staining and sanding and staining again, I did come back with a small artist brush just to touch up the paint on this tiny little lip. This dresser is now a little bit military, a little bit library, a little bit apothecary, and I don't know if it's just the time of year, but I could totally see this sitting in the corner of Santa's office as he writes his naughty or nice list. Make sure to leave me a thumbs up, a comment down below, and make sure that you are subscribed before you go, and I will catch you guys next time.